So I'm Eric Burnette. I'm the Director of Labor Market Intelligence at Kentuckianaworks. Kentuckianaworks is a 7-county board that includes Oldham County. So it's basically Jefferson County and the 6 counties around it in Kentucky. So what I do is basically look at labor market data and try to figure out what it's saying. What's going on in our economy, what's going on in our job market. You know, a lot of times the stories you read in the news are they're not bad, they're just a small piece of the picture, and what data can do is give you the context of the stories you're reading. So I wanted to give you today some data that's really hot off the presses because the new census data came out last week. So we'll be looking at some of that. But basically, this recovery since the Great Recession has been slow but steady, and it continues to be slow but steady. But it's been long enough of a recovery that things are actually pretty good now. So starting really last year, we reached like 1990s levels of unemployment rates being low. So Oldham County is this red line. Kentucky is this purple line. The Louisville MSA, which is a 12-county area in and around Louisville, is the green line. And Jefferson County is the, what is it? I guess I don't have Jefferson County on here. Anyway, so the Louisville MSA, you can see tracks pretty closely with the national rate. It's kind of between the national rate and the Kentucky rate. The Kentucky rate's the higher one because we've got some poor regions of the state that have chronically high unemployment rates. But you guys are basically fine here in Oldham County. So you're overperforming the rest of the state generally. And as David said, you do have very high levels of educational attainment. So the bachelor's degree attainment, bachelors are higher. For Kentucky is less than 25%. For Oldham County, it's above 40%. The national average is about 32, 33. Louisville MSA as a whole is right at that national average. So, Jefferson County is right at that national average. The MSA as a whole is a little lower because, again, we have some rural counties in the MSA that have lower levels of educational attainment. But Oldham County is very educated. Family income is really high here. So this is looking at, so basically Oldham County is the dark blue bar. And this is looking at groupings of family income. The national rate is this kind of light blue bar on the end. So if you're wanting to just kind of peg against a standard, the national rate would be the one, but you can also see how you're doing compared to Jefferson County, the MSA, and so forth, and Kentucky. You have this huge spike here of families with $100,000 to $149,000 a year. And then you have another pretty big spike with families making $200,000 a year or more. And you notice that on this chart, Oldham County is the only place that has that spike, right? So in other words, Oldham County is an outlier for high family income. Diversity is pretty low. So the county is 91% white versus the country, which is about 65% white. And Jefferson County is right at about 71%. So it's white. Oldham County is whiter than the national average and also kind of whiter even than the region as a whole. Poverty is also low. So the poverty rate in Oldham County is right at about 5%. The MSA is more like 8%, Jefferson County 10%. National average about 10%. So it kind of goes along with higher family income than usual, lower poverty than usual. However, most of the people who live in Oldham County do not work in Oldham County. So 60% of the people who live in Oldham County work outside of Oldham County. A lot of them work in Jefferson County, obviously, because it's the biggest county in the region and also has the most jobs. So when you look at Oldham County, 60% are commuting outside of the county. With Jefferson County, only 4% are commuting outside the county. So it is a commuter county to a large extent, although 40% of the people in the county are still working in Oldham County. I'm sure the county officials would probably like that number to be higher, maybe inch it up towards 50%. And then the average drive time for people in Oldham County who are commuting is a little higher. So in Jefferson County, it's about 22 minutes. In Oldham County, it's 29 minutes. And being that this is an average, that means that you're going to have more people in Oldham County who are driving, 45 minutes than you are, say, in Jefferson County. This is a little hard to see for you guys. I don't know why that quality is so bad. Basically, okay, so because so many of the people who live here are working outside of the county, the regional economy is very important. So I'm going to show you some slides now that are all regional. So this is median income for the region, median annual wages. And Louisville, the Louisville MSA, which again is this 12-county area in and around Louisville, is this little red ball. The rest of these balls are our peer cities. And Greg Fisher, the mayor of Louisville, adopted a goal a few years ago that he wanted to raise our median wage adjusted for cost of living to the top half of our peer cities by 2020 and the top third by 2030. So, just because he's the mayor of Louisville, he didn't adopt a Jefferson County specific goal. It's actually, we're using MSA level wages. So we're accounting for the whole region when we're looking at this goal. So basically what this is showing is that everybody is moving up in wage. All of our peer cities pretty much are getting higher wages over the last 10 years. However, where we are in the pecking order is really dependent on small changes. So you can see, like right now, we're grouped pretty closely with these other cities right here. So a small change could move us up or down like 3 places, right? So right now we're still not hitting our goal, but we're kind of still in the race. One city that's done what we're trying to do is Omaha. They went, let's see, Omaha is orange. Omaha went from being behind us, so they had lower median wages adjusted for cost of living in 2013 to jumping ahead of us in 2016, and they stayed ahead of us in 2017. So that's basically what we're trying to do, is hit the sweet spot of raising wages but not raising cost of living so much that it doesn't matter, right? Because that's what happens a lot of times is people's wages go up, but so does the cost of living. You're essentially just running in place, and we're trying to make sure that we're actually getting ahead. Again, this is at the regional level. There are still persistent equity gaps. This is showing, this is low to high on educational attainment. So this is doctoral, professional. This is less than high school. The left side is unemployment rate, and the right side is median annual wage. And what you expect is that the higher your wage, or the higher your education, the higher your wages. And generally, that's what happens, right? So people with a bachelor's degree have low unemployment and higher wages than people with less than high school, right? However, when you split it out between white and black in our region, you see that at every step of the way, African Americans are either facing higher levels of unemployment or lower wages, or both. And so this is looking at, you might think, well, if there are gaps between African Americans and whites, maybe it's because white people just went to college at higher rates or something like that, right? But what we're showing is that even for people with the same levels of education, there's still gaps. So look at the college. Not a big fan of the equity gaps, the easel. People with a college level education, the unemployment rates are about the same, which is low. Like, they're both low. Basically, if you have a college degree, you're going to have a job. But the wages for African Americans are about $10,000 lower. People with a master's degree, the African American unemployment rate's much higher, and the wages are much lower. People so high school dropouts, if you're a high school dropout, the wages are a little bit higher for African Americans, but the unemployment rates are substantially higher. People with a high school diploma, whites with a high school diploma in our region are still unemployed almost fully. So 4% is basically full employment. African Americans is 14.8. So these are some of the challenges we're facing as a region. They're tough problems that I think a lot of places are struggling with. We do have tens of thousands of open jobs. This is from last year, but basically these numbers are all a little bit lower than they were last year because the economy, we've essentially reached a high plateau, so we're just kind of staying there. We're not backsliding. I should say that the recovery's been going on like 8 years. That's a pretty long time, so it would be unprecedented for us not to have a recession in the next couple of years. But anyway, we still have tens of thousands of open jobs, and several thousand of those require a bachelor's degree or higher. And so what are they? The ones that require a bachelor's degree or higher are in basically these fields: management, computer and math, which is IT, business and finance, healthcare, sales, engineering, office and admin support. That could be a lot of like call center jobs, community and social services, and then everything else kind of drops off. So one of the interesting things. Let me skip ahead. So one of the interesting things that we've picked up on is that the region still tends to think of itself as a manufacturing logistics region, but it's quickly becoming a business services region that also has manufacturing and logistics. Logistics still employs a lot of people. Manufacturing still employs a lot of people. They're very important sectors, but business services is now the #1 sector, and it's been growing more consistently. So this is what business services jobs in our region look like over the last 15 years. So you can see, there was a dip in the dot-com recession, there was a dip in the Great Recession, but we've been growing pretty significantly since then. Let's look at manufacturing. Manufacturing, a dip in the dot-com recession, and then a huge dip in the Great Recession. If you look at manufacturing jobs, I might have this chart in here. Yeah, if you look at manufacturing jobs, which are red here, from the bottom of the recession in 2010, it's the #1 sector. But if you look at manufacturing jobs since 2001, it's still a small net negative. Probably, if I reran this with this year's numbers, it'd probably be a small net positive. But essentially, manufacturing over the last 15 years is a wash. Business services over the last 15 years is a huge net positive. And it's also the second largest since the bottom of the recession. So again, this is why context is important. If you read news stories from, say, the bottom of the recession to now about manufacturing, it looks like everything is just going gangbusters, which has been true since the bottom of the recession. But if you look at the big picture, it looks like this. Things have been going gangbusters from the bottom of a very large ditch. So, it's good that things are hot right now, but manufacturing is also very susceptible to recessions. When there's a recession, the first thing people stop doing is buying durable goods and building stuff. So construction and manufacturing get hit really hard. People don't stop going to the hospital. So healthcare tends to be fine. It's basically recession-proof. You really can't even see the recessions on here. Healthcare and business services are really the backbone of our middle-class jobs now in a way that they have not been historically. All right, so I skipped ahead a little bit. Let me back up. All right, so we looked at the top 20 jobs in our region, and we just were trying to figure out which ones are vulnerable to recession and which seem like they didn't even feel the recession. So orange is vulnerable, blue is not. So the #1 job posting every single month is heavy tractor trailer truck drivers. It's actually one of the few jobs you can still do with basically a high school level education. You go to get a CDL, it takes you like 6 weeks, and then you can drive a truck and make $45,000 a year. That's pretty unusual, but there are a lot of those jobs right now. Maybe a tough lifestyle in a lot of ways or whatever, but the wages are good and you don't need that much education. So that's kind of a bright spot in a way, but they are vulnerable to recession. Registered nurses are the #2 top job every month. And most hospitals are looking for BSNs now, but basically with a college degree, you get out, you are guaranteed to have a job, you get, median wage I think is now $60,000 a year, and it's kind of recession proof. Now, they may be susceptible to other things, like if the Affordable Care Act or the Medicaid expansion were repealed, then we wouldn't have as many people going to the hospital, wouldn't need as many nurses. Customer service representatives, kind of recession-proof, but low wages. And one of the challenges we have here, but also as a country right now, is that we have a lot of high-demand, low-wage jobs. So these are jobs that employers are constantly saying, I can't find people to do this. I need more people, but they're not finding people, and they're not able to pay enough to really attract people to that job. So customer services representative call center jobs are kind of one of those where their employers are constantly looking for people. Retail sales may not be as hot this year. We've seen some dips in retail. But anyway, so they tend to be, these top jobs tend to be pretty stable. They don't change that much. Credentials or certifications, certificates, and licenses. How many of you have heard of credentials or certifications being like the new college or something like that? Anybody? A little bit. Some heads nodding. Okay. So this was driving me a little bit crazy because, again, this would be kind of like a news story you might see or something where, or just anecdotal information that, well, you don't really need to go to college anymore. You can just get a credential and then go get a job. And I didn't really know what that meant because there are all kinds of credentials. I have a law license, that's a credential. I don't think that's what people are talking about, but it wasn't really clear. So we got a huge chunk of data and then we sifted through it. And this is based on online job postings over a 12-month period. So we're just seeing what employers were asking for. And then we connected those credentials that employers were asking for with the jobs that they were advertising. And then we were able to use those jobs to see how much those credentials paid, basically. Like what kind of job does that link to? And what we found are that there are some low-cost, low-reward credentials, some high-cost, high-reward credentials, and some low-cost, high-reward credentials. There was only one high-cost, low-reward credential that we found, and that's automotive service. But this is the only chart I'll show you that's not to scale, because actually if I showed you, it would be sprawling out to here. But basically, this is the amount of time it takes to get the credential. This line down the middle is 1 year. So these things take more than a year. These things take less than a year. And then this is the wage line. This line down the middle is the family supporting wage, which when we did this chart was about $47,000 a year for our region. So in the CDL thing, that's kind of that's close to the line. That's close enough, I think. But it's low cost and it's kind of medium reward. The things that we hear a lot about though are home health aides, CNAs, CMAs. Those things just don't pay much. Home health aides, CNAs, they make $9 or $10 an hour, and it might not take that long to get the credential, but you're never going to make a family supporting wage with a CNA credential, right? So when people say credentials are the new college, that's not what they're talking about. There are some things that do link to higher wages that don't take long to get. So these are things you don't necessarily need a college degree for, but I'll bet you most of the people who have these do have a college degree. These are certified A+ technicians, that's a tech thing. Insurance license, Series 6, that's another finance thing. Six Sigma, that's kind of a process management, just a management thing. Can be used in manufacturing, business services, healthcare, a variety of fields. Cisco, and then network. Those are again tech things. So basically, we're looking at finance and tech and business. Those are the areas where you could get a credential. Maybe you don't need a college degree, but probably most of the people who have these do. And then up here we have things like pharmacists, nurse practitioners, RNs, CPAs, PMPs. These things do require some post-secondary education. But if you get, so one of the things is that if you could say, we have some underperforming college majors, which is true. So social sciences and liberal arts majors in our region do make significantly less money than people with STEM degrees or healthcare degrees or business degrees. However, if you get, say, a philosophy degree and you get a PMP at the same time, or if you get an English degree and a PMP, that's probably a better example, you're going to be a lot more marketable than you are with an English degree by itself. So one of our challenges is how do we connect better the education output with the employer demand? And it used to be employers did a lot of training in-house, but if you don't expect your employees to be around for 20 or 30 years, it's more of a risk for you as an employer to train them in-house, right? So employers are hoping for post-secondary education to do all the training and hand off people who are fully ready to go, but that's not happening because the educators don't really know what employers need. Sometimes employers don't even know what they're going to need 5 years down the road, right? And the time it takes between starting college and starting a job is just too long, and it doesn't work. But if we can start to embed some of these short-term trainings, so if you go to college and you get a liberal arts degree, but then you go to an HR boot camp for 8 weeks and you get an HR job, that's the kind of system that might actually be nimble enough. Because then, you're not trying to start somebody in an entire major in HR or whatever. That may not even be in demand when they get out of school, but you're just getting them some good basic, foundational skills, and then you can do the subject matter training at the end when they're about to go get a job. So that's where I see this kind of stuff going, is that if you pair post-secondary education with the right kind of credential, we could do a better job of connecting supply and demand in the labor market. All right, so we did that. Oh, you cannot read this. This is basically just the list of business services jobs and what they pay. This is actually business and financial, but they're a big chunk of the business services jobs. It's something because, again, we have a lot of manufacturing employers and logistics employers who've been around a long time, and healthcare too. And they've been really involved in stuff. We're pretty familiar with those sectors, but business services is like this big amorphous thing. Nobody knows what it is. Nobody knows what people do. And so this is a list just showing you what they do. If David can email everybody this slide deck, you could read that list. But basically it's just, accountants and finance and management and, office jobs. So let's see, this one is Cincinnati and this is Columbus. And Dayton's actually pretty high in the wages. So the cost of living adjustment is a double-edged sword. We use it because, again, I want to make sure we're actually getting ahead. But the reason it's a double-edged sword is that areas with low economic activity have low cost of living. And also rural areas have low cost of living. So The reason Dayton looks so good on this chart is because it has a very low cost of living. So their wages are kind of fine. They have a lot of engineers. They have the Air Force contingent. They have GE airplane manufacturing stuff, as does Cincinnati. But they have a very low cost of living. So if you pair kind of medium wages with low cost living, you end up high on this list. Conversely, if you have a high cost of living, like let's do Raleigh, purple. Raleigh really should be over here, but it's expensive to live in Raleigh now, so they get bumped down. Compared to our other peer cities, they get bumped down. So it's kind of got pros and cons to using the cost of living adjustment, but I think for us, the pros outweigh the cons, and that's why we do it. If you're looking just at wages overall, it would be like Raleigh, Charlotte, Richmond. And then depending on Columbus would be up there too on the wages.
On that same chart, you had mentioned Omaha earlier.
Yeah.
Is it because of call center type jobs out there? What has made them leapfrog global?
Why Omaha? Well, I haven't done a deep dive on Omaha yet, to be honest. Every city that's doing well economically has some combination of a really key industry that happened at the right time, and then kind of the other institutional supports to make that key industry thrive and build on itself. So we've done a lot of research on Nashville, because Nashville's been taking off really like crazy in the last 5 years, but they've been distancing themselves from us for the last 10 years. So if you look at like 20 years ago, Louisville and Nashville, we were about the same size, economies were very similar, regionally similar, like pretty much everything was similar. They were a little bit ahead of us on everything, that's it. Now they're way ahead of us, way ahead. They're growing like 10 times as fast as we are right now. So with Nashville, it's because of this hospital and healthcare management cluster, where they have HCA, the biggest for-profit hospital chain in the country, and HCA has spun off a gazillion other companies that are all centered around managing hospitals and healthcare industries, and basically teaching hospitals how to make money or running hospitals. And so as our hospital payments as a country have grown and grown and grown, and then 5 years ago the Affordable Care Act basically threw gasoline on that on an already growing fire for Nashville's economy. They've benefited from that. So they're getting, so hospital payments are way bigger than health insurance, government administration, home health care. And what do we have? We have health insurance, government administration, home health care. They have hospital payments, and that's the big kahuna. So Omaha, I would guess, it's Warren Buffett spinoffs, finance, that kind of thing. And they're probably just, they're lucky that he's from there. I mean, Seattle is where it is today because Bill Gates was from Seattle. Originally they started Microsoft in Albuquerque, and then they moved it to Seattle. And if they'd kept it in Albuquerque would probably be a hot tech hub. It's these big players that come along at the right time, and then the spin-offs they generate. But you're making me think I should do a deep dive on Omaha. Yes?
Have you done any analysis with Indiana, with the bridges and people living in Indiana or moving to Indiana and commuting to Louisville?
Not a whole lot. There's like an urban planning arm of the same umbrella that we're under. But I haven't done as much of that. I mean, basically we expect that area is going to grow a lot now, and that there will be a lot of, companies that locate there who want to be close to the highway and retail and.
Well, there's a lot of people that seem to be looking in that area to live as well because it's less expensive.
Yeah.
And then commuting because of the bridges.
Right.
Specifically the new bridge now. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably an accurate assessment. Yeah. Yes?
This may be more of a theoretical question
Yeah. Actually, that's a great segue to the other thing I wanted to show you, the career calculator. So let me just pull that up real quick. And by the way, this is something you can all put on your phones. You can add a button for it, just like an app. Here. Thanks. So this is something that we only have here. No other city has one of these yet because we built it, and we built it because we weren't finding anything that was doing what we wanted it to do. So if you want to look up, say, registered nurses, it pulls up all the nursing jobs. Click on that. Shows you the wages from 10th percentile all the way to 90th percentile, so you get a sense of not just the median wage or the average wage, but the whole scope of wages. And basically 10th to 25th is looking at your typical entry-level wages, and then 75th to 90th is looking at advanced. So nurses are basically starting at 45 to 53, but ending up in kind of the 70s and 80s. Job postings in the last 90 days, so you get a sense of current demand. Trend line, because again, that context is important. If I showed you welders, it would show a big dip when we had the recession, because welders got hit hard with the recession. Nurses didn't, really. Local programs, there are a lot of them for nursing. And then typical entry-level education is now a bachelor's degree. For nursing, it used to be an associate's degree, but that's changed in the last few years. And then a description of the job at the bottom. So that's occupation search. You can look up any job in our region. Then by college major, you can do, let's say, business. So again, this is showing, so we wanted to show you the kind of progression of wages over the years. So it starts out 3 years after graduation, then 5 years after, then 7 years after. And when you do business majors, they look pretty good. Starting out at 53, then 66, 5 years later, and then ending up at 71. But if you filter by level of education and you do bachelor's degree, it drops them down to what sounds about right, for somebody fresh out of college, 36,000, then going to 50 in the 50s. But if you look at MBAs are starting out in the 70s and then going up from there. And we don't just have the wages, but we also have the number of people who've graduated. So we're churning out a lot of MBAs right now, actually. And it's good. They're all getting jobs and making good money. This isn't, let me put it back on the all degrees level.
Does this take into account whether it's a public or a private institution?
It doesn't, but these are people who went to school in our region. So, we only have a handful of schools. These are also people who stayed in Kentucky. So basically, the people who do move to Indiana, their wages are not part of this picture. So it's a limitation of the data set for now, but it gives you some idea of what local grads who live here are doing. Then we have the percentage of people going to grad school within 5 years, because for some of these majors, like say anthropology, the wages are abysmally low, but you might think, well, you don't get an anthropology degree to get a job, you get an anthropology degree to go to grad school, which a lot of people do, not as high as you might hope given their wages. So anyway, we have that now, and then in a 4-state region, we're looking at what people actually do with this major. So business majors are managers, accountants, retail supervisors, and salespeople. Those are the top jobs in this 4-state region. We needed the 4-state region because we needed a bigger sample size. There are some jobs that are so big that they just pop up on lists for a lot of majors. So like retail sales is on pretty much everybody's list because everybody works in retail at some point, I guess. So anyway, and then again, local programs. And then finally, if you just want to look up how to make $100,000 a year, which is what a lot of our students will probably do, you can find top 10 occupations within a range of 100,000, again, in our region. One of the surprises there is aircraft mechanics is number 4. They do very well. And then top 10 majors within a range of 100,000. And again, some majors are so big they pop up on the $30,000 list and the $100,000 list. So like business will pop up on pretty much every list because there are a lot of business majors. But it gives you a sense of what, what majors link to what wages and then what jobs are out there. So this is, I think, the best tool for doing what you were asking of trying to guide students. What we're trying to do is inject some data into the conversation. So it's not just, well, at Thanksgiving I was talking to my uncle and he said welding is really hot and I can make $100,000 a year doing that, so I'm going to go do that. What I want is people to hear that and then look it up and then get the information and then make a decision based on the data, not just on anecdotes. Any other questions? Yes. Yep. Yeah, each data point's on a different update schedule, but yeah, the data is updated. So some of it will be updated like once a year, and some of it's updated once a month. We're also working on a Spanish language version of this that should be out soon. Anything else? All right, thank you guys very much for having me, and thank you for your time.